Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. This is going to be a bit of a different video. I'm going to be doing a video talking about just different questions that viewers have had for me and giving some of my thoughts, maybe some of my advice and everything like that. Maybe some of them we're going to cover drama in the future, but this one is going to be about burnout. And it's something that really hit home to me, not only with playing the game, but also making content about the game. So I wanted to break it up into a couple different sections to talk about their question, and then also just some of my experiences over the years, because I've played and made content forever, really. I mean, like, ever since Warlords of Draenor, I was, like, writing guides, making content and videos and everything. This YouTube channel is, like, 8 years old or something like that. So a lot of this really hit close to home. Their question is, initially, how do you stay motivated to keep playing and keep grinding? They said they started raiding in Emerald Nightmare. Been a BM hunter since then, generally an AOTC raider with a little bit of Mythic for fun and Mythic Plus, etc. But I feel like it's all or nothing a lot of the time. I sat out the whole end of Vault and beginning of Aberrus because the idea of grinding M+, and then pugging endlessly was exhausting. The last thing I felt I should be doing was sitting in queue getting declined for 50 years to play with friends. But the idea of jumping in, doing keys, raiding, even when you're in a guild that you enjoy, that fits your needs, still sounds exhausting, and I think it's hard to get away from this idea of what you should be doing, especially if you follow streamers, world first raiders, and theoretically want to be doing that. He talked about a few personal things of some limitations from like their own health, and I don't want to divulge too much into it. But this is something that really hit close to home to me, because Dragonflight was another sort of like pivot point where I went and sort of broke a 4-year streak, really, of like really hardcore raiding. And so I raided with 2 years of Future, Sloot, and a lot of people who ended up raiding in Method now. When I was on EU in BFA, and then in Shadowlands, I was in Imperative the entire time. And so I went from this like super hard grind into like fierce on NA, which was like 5 days, and they tried to like jump up in hours and add overtime, and that like hit me with like a culture shock. And then that guild fell apart, and then I joined Incarnate, who I used to raid with, 5-6 years ago, and so many people are still there, still raiding and still enjoying themselves, and it was almost just like I got to exhale finally. For one, there was like the growing pains I had in Fierce of like not being in that hardcore sort of environment, and then going back to Incarnate, I'm like, okay, now I can kind of like calm myself down. And so for like the first part of when you're stepping out and you're not rating that sort of level anymore that you're used to of AOTC, bit of Mythic, you also need to be able to like downgrade a bit of your expectations for people you're playing with, for yourself, for your preparation. Because like you said, if you're watching a lot of streamers or content creators who know all this stuff inside and out, you might feel the pressure of, oh, I like need to know this too. I need to have this thing going on. But a lot of times, you just like don't. You need to be able to like put forth a decent amount of effort in like some of your pug groups, or make sure you're in a large enough guild that there's still stuff going on, because I think that's probably one of the most challenging things, is just making sure you're sort of building those relationships but having the flexibility so that you can like take breaks and then come back later. And that's something that I already sort of see in Incarnate, is that there's a lot of people who I raided with 5 or 6 years ago that aren't on the raid team, but they still play the game a lot. They kind of come in for like heroic runs and everything like that with the guild every now and then. They do keys with them. And there's that sort of like social rank to the guild where people aren't always on or always playing or whatever, but they sort of like prove themselves as raiders, and they're still good players to interact with and still good players to do things with. So if your current guild has that, awesome. Try to make sure, like, sometimes you just have to be the catalyst to make these events happen and make these things happen, which is exhausting, and I'm sure you're already feeling the exhaustion from the game, but I think it's a lot more of a relief when it's people and you're trying to get people into Discord together to do keys or do alt runs or whatever it is, rather than having this sort of like faceless interaction with the player base where you queue up for a dungeon, people might be like terrible and put forth no effort, and then it feels like every single run could be like that, and like 1 out of 5 or something will be satisfactory as you're just trying to get like some 17s and 18s done or something like that. Just in general, also being in a position where you can take a break. One of the parts that was mentioned from this viewer was that it felt like it was always all or nothing. That you'd be like a very competitive player, getting into some mythic bosses, getting into some higher M+, or you'd just, be casual and just farming some mounts, or just running around in game not doing much. And I've had some similar experiences with that, and I think, especially for how long I played the game, that it's very much been like all or nothing for me. And the point of like raid progression, Mythic Plus progression being like crazy, crazy important. And then when I'm not reaching those sort of goals, it starts leaning me more towards like wanting to quit. And I've had 3 different experiences where I wanted to quit WoW, or at least, you know, take a long break. And it was a few different times. So the first time that I experienced it was Season 3 of BFA, which was like Beguiling, and I think it was also Eternal Palace. So in that, I was just like insanely busy. That was the first time I ever casted a World First race, and then we went right into casting MDI in Ohio. And so we were literally like progressing the raid while a good chunk of our raid team was also competing in the MDI. So that like cut into our raid hours. We were not meeting, you know, the progression that we were used to or that we were wanting to. And some of the guild was like kind of over hardcore raiding, and some of the guild was not. And so it was sort of like trying to balance out everybody wanting to be on that same page. Also, Beguiling M Plus was terrible. Like I just had a horrible time with it. And sort of thankfully, I was actually, you know, in Ohio with the other commentators, and I was actually just getting more time outside and more time touching grass to be able to hang with people. Because a lot of, I believe this was like 2019 era, a lot of 2019, I was like traveling a lot, and I was getting some wonderful experiences and was really like privileged to be able to do it. But that also helped me sort of like take a break from the game and not be playing it for like 8-10 hours a day, which I've been doing like literally since I started playing WoW, for like since like Cataclysm or something. So that was sort of like the break era where we always knew we're like, okay, we're behind in M+. Okay, well, I don't really like the season of M, or sorry, we're behind in raids, so like whatever, we own up to it. We're gonna get like World 60 or something like that instead of the 20-ish that we usually got. With Mythic Plus, it was like, all right, whatever, like the season's not that fun. I'm not gonna try to hard push myself. And there were times where I just started working on alts. I think that was one of the first times I played like Druid, for example, as an alt, just to like pug keys and get some experiences there. The second time I wanted to quit was in Shadowlands. Shocker, no surprise. And I want to say it was around like Sanctum, but it was also sort of like Sepulchre and the exhaustion that raid really like set into me. So it was like 2 times in the expansion, but I kind of think of it as just like one because the reasons were very similar, where it was just a lot of work to get Imperative rolling, and I wasn't even like one of the officers or anything, but trying to like get everybody on the same page and get everybody putting forth like that equal effort when there was just so much questing and so much slog to prepare characters before you could even like step into the raid. And then, you know, around Sanctum time, we had already had the same season of M+ and just had it all over again, that having to deal with like the Sanctum lieutenants as the like little mini bosses really just exhausted my experiences when it came to M+. Having to like fight all the final bosses when you're slowed permanently because you would skip that one lieutenant that was just an icicle dude, just absolutely exhausted me when I was playing Priest 24/7. I felt like I was just like locked into my situation. And again, that was an area where I just needed to like take a break. And when it came to like Sepulchre, obviously I had, you know, like my own drama, and I'll talk about that in the caster experience section. But I really just needed to like take another break from WoW and start finding other areas where I could sort of find myself progressing in life. And that's where, around that Sepulchre time, was where I started really seriously taking my weight loss, really seriously started like looking more at my health. And so if you guys don't know, that was like early 22. And that was around the area where I started like cooking for myself, learning to cook, setting myself to a workout regimen. I lost 55 pounds from it, which is awesome. And I feel just a lot better, a lot healthier as well. And having those like outside experiences, it's almost like investing where you like hedge your bets, where you can like find excitement in one area of your life, even though another area is like not as exciting, did actually make like a really big difference. And then I would say like the third time is kind of where I'm at right now, where Dragonflight, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just been the accumulation of like exhaustion of like tough experiences, or feeling like I need to be the one like making the groups or keeping the groups together, not having a consistent M+ team to play with anymore, and some of the just like unsaid, oh, we're just gonna go play with these guys now, really made things like to a point where right now I just like was pugging M+ yesterday, and I was just like, fuck, like I just don't even like want to stream right now. I just like want to take a break. And part of that, I think, is also that hedging effect I mentioned, where I am trying to work on other parts of my life And there's those moments where you just sort of like plateau, where I feel like I plateaued with like my workout experience. So I'm working on like hiring a trainer, getting to a regular gym instead of just using my apartment gym. Bought new cookbooks so I could try to not get burnt out on like the food that I'm eating. Trying to like go out and like make more friends and be the catalyst for like getting conversations rolling, even though I'm a very introverted person, right? And God, that shit's exhausting. Right? And so I don't think I'm gonna like quit WoW at this point. But there certainly is that maybe like looming exhaustion that I could very much relate to from the viewer. And when it comes to like creating content, I really started by doing it as just like a hobby. I was in college, I was in community college, in fact, and I was just the only person playing like Holy Priest back on like WoD, and people were like, oh, you should like write a guide for it. And so I made a guide on my guild's forums. It was Last Word on Ner'zhul, I think. And I just wrote a Holy Priest guide from just my experiences, and I was some, world 200 noob, and nobody else was playing Holy, because back then it was bad. And I just put it up on Reddit, and people liked it, and that kind of kicked off a path to making content as a career. And there's been like a lot of times over the years where the numbers and the excitement of like viewers and just like having good conversations can like absolutely build you up, but then it can also sort of like bring you down. And that's been something that I've always been like trying to work on, or at least acknowledge over the years of like content creator experiences. And also this year I've been trying to like take the content much more seriously, because I, for the longest time, was really like lazy, maybe laissez-faire, whatever you want to call it, and was just like, oh, I'll just make content if I feel like it, and we'll see where it takes us. Because when I finished college, I got an offer from Blizzard. This is like 2018. 2017 was the very first MDI. So 2018, I got an offer from Blizzard to keep commentating for them, and the pay is good, and they kept, sort of like raising my pay over time. And so I was like, okay, well, I still need to stream to like fully pay my bills. Casting doesn't do everything, but it was like it was a great foundation that I was able to just kind of like cruise and not take it too seriously. And then there's a lot of times where there's other fantastic creators that really just put their all into everything and have grown massively and past me, even though I've been streaming longer. And, obviously I have nobody to blame but myself. But that's where this expansion of this year, I've been like really trying to push myself. And a lot of times when you're trying to grow, it just, speaking as somebody who's 6'4", growing pains really hurt. When I was growing up, my legs would just ache for days. And I feel like this is a lot of where I'm at as a person, is trying to like push myself to grow in a lot of areas at once, especially when it comes to content creation. And then, sometimes you're just not really going to have a good month. You're just not going to have the results that you're expecting from your efforts. And even though your efforts are good and they're worthy and, all that stuff, it can still just be exhausting, not getting the expectation of your experiences. And I think that's doubly true for playing a game like World of Warcraft, where gearing up is a direct reflection to your time investment. Doing rep grinds is a direct relation to your time investment. You put the thing in, you get results, and it's great. And that's one of the best things about video games. One of the best things I had growing up with video games. I just saw that output from my inputs made my outputs what I wanted them to be. And it's tough when you're, obviously being a creator. It's a huge privilege to be able to do it and pay my bills this way. But it's also at the same time easy to just like get in your own head, where you don't have somebody like looming over you at work, or like these crazy deadlines that other people set for you, that you need to make this meeting, you need to be here at this certain time, and it's really just all on you. And that's been a bigger challenge for me than I'd like to admit, of just like having to discipline myself and be the one to rein in and set bedtimes for myself, and not have these degen schedules where I just don't feel like making content on other platforms. And that's been a challenge, to say the least. One of the biggest challenges I experienced really was last year with, obviously commentating and not being a part of MDI for the first time, really since it existed. That's been another thing that's been kind of bothering me, and leading, I think, in a lot of cases to more of my burnout, is that, after the fallout of like my ex-girlfriend and the breakup and everything, I really tried to do everything within my own power to act professionally, go through everything and make sure that I was, putting myself in the best position to be able to return, cooperate with anything Blizzard wanted, needed, and everything like that. And after spending like a year just trying to be quiet about it, trying to go about my experiences, I still don't know if I'm ever going to really be back with them. I still don't know if I'm ever going to work with them again. And it's just beyond frustrating because I feel like I've done everything within my power and everything that, you know, like a man should do in this time, in this age. And so it's just, you know, an exhausting experience to be in that position where, you know, I was kind of just pushed out of my job and pushed out of my livelihood in a lot of cases and sort of just like set adrift. And so that has been, you know, like obviously a huge challenge. Working in other just commentary events, it's been really frustrating seeing how important it is to just like be crazy into networking and be crazy into like making friends and trying to like know the right people as a result of like getting hired. Because again, for me, you know, I'm not always the first one who's going to like reach out and try to like make all the friends. And so it's like very frustrating when I feel like I try to put a lot of effort into the experiences I bring as like a commentator and the skill I bring into commentary. And then just seeing, okay, well, it's more about who you know than what you know and what you can say on camera. And that's been just, like I said, kind of a grueling experience over many years to try to like contend with and sort of like deal with in a lot of aspects. And it's probably one of the things where with esports kind of just sliding away more and more, I probably won't commentate as much. I hope to still do like world first stuff, but yeah, at this point I don't really have any expectations to work with Blizzard again, even though, you know, obviously I'd really want to. Well, I was like really happy when I first was going hardcore into content creation to just like sit inside all day and like play video games. I even moved down to Austin knowing nobody except for my brother, and a lot of times he would invite me out and I was like, like I just want to stream, I just want to play games, I just want to make content, I just kind of want to do whatever I want inside. And now, like, I'm 28, I'm going to be 29 this end of summer. I really, like, feel like I haven't actually gone out and experienced much. And that's kind of frustrating as well to see because, you know, like, I didn't go to, like, a frat college or anything like that. I went to community college, and then I went to a college where you commuted, basically, and everybody commuted. I had a lot of, like, older classmates. And so, even when it comes to, like, just my life in general, it feels like there's a lot of times where I want to, like, go out and do things, and I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do. You know, obviously, like, I love to read. I've been getting into working out and cooking and everything. There's almost this like culture shock when I like meet other people of how they're very active and very involved, have their different clubs, have their different like cliques and friend groups and everything. And I feel like I'm very like late to the party in that aspect. And so it's really weird coming from that content creator's perspective where there's a lot of times where I do legitimately want to just sit there and grind like 70, 80 hours a week of work. Because there's new content, there's new hype, there's stream stuff to do, there's YouTube videos I want to make, and then there's these sort of like lull moments where, God, I want to like go outside and do things. God, I want to have those other experiences. And it feels like in, you know, 2019, 2018, I was like really hitting a point that I wanted to with being able to travel for commentary work, being able to get out and do things and meet other commentators and meet other streamers and content creators. Then sort of like COVID hit, and then as COVID was like dying down, whatever, you know, with my ex, we just like didn't really go out much. And obviously I don't want to like talk too much about my personal life or bring too much of it into it. But I felt like there was a lot of times I just had this sort of cabin fever, and I was like, I have somebody in my life I can experience things with, and then nothing really happened. And there's a lot of times it felt like I was cooped up inside all the time, and it was just exhausting. Like I said, to say the least. There's been a trend going on, right, where I feel like there's these things I put the effort into, and then I'm not quite getting where I want to be, and not quite getting those results, and finally I'm trying to do a better job of like keeping myself and my part and my actions with it accountable to that aspect, right? So I know a large part of this video kind of came from the perspective of like my venting, and you know, I appreciate for you guys sticking with it. Of course, I know like this is a very different video and I probably won't have too many of these like it, but I still plan to make content. I still, you know, I've had those thoughts about like quitting. I've had those thoughts about like taking long breaks or big sabbatical or something. I probably will not go crazy with time away. For one, you gotta work to eat. But another is that there's a lot of times where I find that I just sort of like worry too much or think too much instead of just taking action. And I think probably the best, you know, solution for me or whatever, the best way forward is to make sure that I'm just making content when I feel like making content when I want to, and then also spreading myself out as to the content that I am making, which is part of why I'm making this video and not like streaming today, was the fact that I wanted to find things that I really wanted to be passionate and really wanted to talk about, rather than like worrying, oh, I need to stream today, or oh, I need to make this video at this specific time. And so probably one of the biggest things I'm going to be doing is making sure that when I am streaming, I am really engaged or am really doing things I want to do. For example, I felt a lot of pressure of just pushing up the Raider IO ladder and pushing up my IO score. And I don't know if I'm going to try to stress as much about that when I am streaming, rather than doing something in the game that I want to do, even if it's like gearing up an alt, even if it's going to be like less viewers or whatever it is. That's something that I've had a long time trying to like contend with, because obviously you're always comparing and fighting for viewership on Twitch, which is also, you know, how you pay your bills in life. And I'm going to try to do my best to not completely ignore it, but also just to make sure I'm more present in what I'm doing and make sure that I'm like focusing on talking to chat, having some fun conversations, having some good experiences with people who do tune in, who take the time out of their day to be able to check in on the stream. When it comes to YouTube videos, there's been a few videos I've seen from other creators that I really like, and I'm probably going to yoink some of those ideas and make videos myself about some of them, because I think that they're interesting topics, and I need to feel like less bad about doing that, or less like guilty about doing that, of like, oh, I should have thought of that idea first, and just send it and just put it out into the world. Because there's a lot of times, like I said, where I think too much about those things. I'm a little like too meticulous or too thoughtful about them, instead of just taking action, just like sending it, screw it, you know? So I'm gonna try to do better about that. I'm gonna try to make sure I'm still streaming like 30 hours a week or something along those lines, maybe 40 or more if there's like a lot of cool things going on, or a lot of things I'm like really passionate about. But I know that like the only way I'm really gonna be able to continue creating content is if, you know, I keep my mental good. And that's, man, that's been a grueling experience trying to be able to do. But you know, I'm getting there. Like, that's probably the biggest thing, is I'm getting there, and you know, I'm putting the work in. And sometimes it's just tough to like take the next step forward when you're trying to, you know, make those improvements. So I'm working on it. But thank you for watching. You know, thank you to the people who've tuned into the stream, tuned into the YouTube videos, sub to them, all that other stuff makes this life possible. Couldn't do it without you guys. And like I said, I don't want to quit, but I also want to like acknowledge how I feel about this, instead of just, hey guys, it's fine, everything's good all the time, you know? Because sometimes it sort of like leaks out from being like overly negative about things that like, it's just gonna happen and wow. Like, oh, they didn't hotfix this boss, like, whoop-de-doo, instead of like, God, I can't believe that this boss still exists, right? And sort of being more forward and more straightforward about how I feel, rather than just like, oh, it's always posy vibes, you know? Because that just can't be me. But anyway, love you faces, thanks for hearing me vent, and if you guys have other questions, if you ever have like long-form questions that would make good videos, or good drama time to cheer us up, be sure to hit me up on Discord, links in the description down below, and I have a couple like drama time questions or stories that I do want to share with you guys in the coming weeks. So be sure to keep an eye out for that, and I'll catch you all next time.